All right, A Day to Remember fans. Let's talk about the Big Ole Album Volume 1. This record came out a couple weeks ago now, but I wanted to sit with it a few times and listen to it before I did a review of it and talked about it. And I really wanted to come away with a much better take on this. But after a few listens, it's just it's a miss. So A Day to Remember had this record that came out a few years ago called You're Welcome. It was sort of a change for what they normally would do, being a pop punk band with breakdowns, easy core. A Day to Remember became a gigantic band. They had records that were very popular and in the rock scene seen as this band that really had some movement behind them. You're Welcome was a change of pace where it had a bit more of like a country feeling to it. I don't really know how to describe it better than that because I think I listened to it like one time and I was like, I'm good. This is not made for me. You know, these are guys from Florida, and I understand the desire to sort of make some music in genres that are not always the same thing, this pop punk, this heavy stuff. The problem that I have with it is that it doesn't sound like you anymore. It doesn't sound like A Day to Remember from albums like Homesick, from albums like For Those Who Have Heart. It doesn't sound like that band anymore, which is fine, but it does sound just so like every other band that's doing it right now. Every other band that is putting out radio-friendly rock, putting out heavy stuff that goes to Octane Radio, it just sounds like all of that. Mixed in with a little bit of this country sound, this southern rock sound, this, for lack of a better term, Nickelback, where you're just sort of doing watered-down country music for a rock audience that almost sounds like a completely different band than A Day to Remember. There are some moments that I thought were okay on this after listening to it a few times. Obviously, the production is really good on this record. Everything sounds crisp and clean. The vocals are really good. The guitars sound really good. Everything sounds great. So I don't have an issue with anything production-wise on this. And obviously, you have some great songwriters here. So there are some choruses where I'm like, yeah, I like that chorus. I had LeBron stuck in my head for quite a couple of days. Do I love the song? No, but I can't deny that it's catchy and I can't deny that it gets stuck in my head and I'm listening to it. You know, certainly like there is something here for people who may be coming in without a lot of the old school nostalgia that I have for A Day to Remember. Somebody who was such a big fan of their early records that I don't need this new sound, I guess. I was surprised because they were doing this record. I felt like they wanted to return to the form. Everybody had a problem with You're Welcome. Everybody had an issue with the sound of the record and the change.
What is even going on? Ugh.
And after doing Homesick at When We Were Young in 2024, and being such a band that is fine playing all of the old stuff, focusing mainly on their first few records, and maybe playing a song or two, some newer stuff that has come out since, I thought they were going to return to form on this record and it was going to be closer to that stuff. But it's really not. It's really just, you guys missed the breakdowns, you guys missed the heavy stuff, here you go. We did that again. Even on the first song, Make This Make Sense, they kind of bring up, there's a lot of like talking at random moments on this record.
You want it, you got it.
Where they're sort of addressing the audience and all of the people who didn't like the previous record and saying like, oh, this is what you want, here it is. And then they go into a breakdown riff. And it's like, we wanted that because that's who you were. You did that. We wanted the same thing you always did. Why are you mad at us? How is this our fault? The other issue I have, and this is something that's been coming up a lot with these new albums from some of these bands, is there is a lot of radio rock friendly producers and radio rock friendly writing that's going on in the scene that is creating sort of cookie cutter formulaic stuff that just is made for audiences that really like this style of music. And it just ends up being the same as everything else. Unfortunately, a lot of bands that I love are going down this route. I think some bands are doing it in their own way that makes it more interesting, but I certainly think that A Day to Remember here was just doing very like clean, cookie cutter, radio rock friendly. This goes to the radio, people love it. And that can have breakdowns, it can have screaming now. We have definitely opened up a world in which that stuff is doing well in different audiences. But for me, the songwriting here is just so bland and ordinary in the same vein as everything else you hear that I don't need to listen to A Day to Remember do that. I have Homesick. I have What Separates Me From You. I'll just go back to those. There's a couple songs that I have some major issues with, though. Songs like Feedback, which was originally released last year, so this is a song that's been out for a while but is now placed on this record. They're telling people, don't criticize this band. There's a couple songs like that on this record where they seem to be responding to all of the negative takes on You're Welcome or negative feedback that all of these people had about these albums. It doesn't read right to me. It reads to me like somebody in a position of one of the biggest bands in the scene, band that makes a ton of money, band that sells out tours, band that plays big venues. Like, you're going to get mad at me for not liking something you put out? I feel like that's a little bit unfair, you know? You're saying I don't want your feedback as a critic. I don't want this stuff. And unfortunately, you are one of the largest bands. Unfortunately, you do make music for a lot of people, and you are on big stages. You have a varying audience and a varying style that you've created and cultivated over the course of 20 years now, almost. You are not immune to feedback, and you just sound whiny and angry about it when you put out a song or multiple songs on this record where you're like, don't give me your criticism. Critics, you can't say anything about this. Like, hey, sorry, I'm going to say what I think about it. I'm sorry, Day to Remember. Do what you want with it. If you don't want to do anything new, that's fine. But I don't think that you are immune. I don't think you're in a position to not have to be criticized if somebody doesn't like the music. One of the other songs that I had an issue with, certainly listened to it a few times because it's not a song that A Day to Remember is so commonly doing, is a song like All My Friends. It's like, oh shit, here we go again, another night out here with all my friends. Which feels like something that comes from You're Welcome, from this new sound that they've cultivated, and is definitely for a different audience than the same kids that were on Warped Tour watching them play Homesick. This song definitely channels that Nickelback vibe. This is like, we're going out to the bar, all my friends are hanging out, and it's for a completely different audience. I don't necessarily love it. I get that it's for a different audience, and if they like it, great. It still reads as this very weird, like, this isn't you. This doesn't sound like you as a band. This sounds like some other band's song that you happen to be singing. I think that is the disconnect for me, more so than just it's not a song that I like. It doesn't sound like the vibe of the bands that I'm listening to anymore. And knowing the history, knowing the records, knowing all the music they've ever released, I don't see this song fitting on a set list that I'm going to go and see, you know, this band play all these old songs that everybody loves, and you're going to be like, oh, here's this Nickelback song. It seems strange to me. I don't get it. Not for me. Overall, I did not love this record. I feel like this is a different band altogether. Maybe it's a band that's going to stay in this new vein and they're going to stay making music like this, which is fine. It's just a different band than what I grew up with, what a band that I want to listen to still. If that's the choice that they made, that's okay. I think as long as the production stays clean and they keep making it in this rock radio vibe, it won't ever be a bad band. It just might be boring. It might not be as entertaining to me. If I go and see them live and they play some of these songs, I'm stepping away for those. I'm like, whatever, you know, do that for your new audiences or do that in other places. But these are not songs that I am going to be revisiting very often. These are not songs that I would have on in the background. I'd probably notice and skip it. This is volume 1. So will there be a volume 2? Who knows? There's a lot of bands that are putting out multiple albums over this year and the next year. So perchance we might hear some different stuff on the next one, though I doubt it's going to be a very big change from what we heard on this one. So good luck to you, new band of A Day to Remember. Good luck.